This isn't a scene from some old Cold War movie. No, this is very real. This is footage the Kremlin wanted you to see, released just a few weeks ago. It was a clear, televised warning to the entire world. It all went down on May 21st, 2024. That's when the Russian Ministry of Defense dropped this chilling, high-def footage. You're seeing convoys of Iskander-M missile systems just rolling through open fields. And up above, MiG 31K interceptors, yeah, the ones that carry Russia's deadliest hypersonic weapons, they were taking to the skies. Let's be clear, this was not just another military drill. This was carefully choreographed political theater. Now, the official statement that came with the footage, it mentioned the loading of special ammunition. That's the Russian military's bone-chilling code for tactical nuclear warheads. Stay till the end because some shocking things I'm going to reveal in this explainer. Let's get back to it. As we're about to see, the timing and the location of this drill are what make it so incredibly alarming. So this was a televised nuclear warning. For the first time since the war in Ukraine really kicked off, Russia went beyond just making threats. They started showing the world the actual hardware. These drills, happening in Russia's southern military district, were the first of their kind. And it all boils down to one crucial question. Why now? What on earth changed that pushed Vladimir Putin to take this step? All right, to really get a handle on how serious this is, we've got to break down exactly what kind of weapons we're talking about here. Because, not all nuclear weapons are created equal. And the difference between them? It's absolutely critical to understanding the threat we're facing right now. Okay, so on one side, you've got your strategic nukes. These are the big ones, the end-of-the-world scenario weapons. We're talking about intercontinental ballistic missiles that could literally wipe cities off the map. They're so dangerous, they're actually governed by treaties like New START. But then you have tactical nukes, and these are a whole different ballgame. They're designed for the battlefield. They have a smaller yield, and their job is to take out specific military targets. Think aircraft carrier groups or hardened bunkers, not entire populations. And this is the really crucial part. What they call a non-strategic nuclear weapon is seen by some military strategists as, well, usable. It's a terrifying thought, right? But the idea is that you could use one to get a decisive edge on the battlefield without starting a full-blown planet-ending nuclear war. So the big question is, how many of these battlefield nukes does Russia actually have? Well, Western intelligence puts the number at around 2,000. And here's the real kicker. That massive arsenal is not limited by any international arms control treaties. It's a completely unregulated stockpile of unbelievable destructive power. Now, these May drills, they zeroed in on two key delivery systems. First up, the Iskander-M. This is a ground-launched missile, and it is notoriously hard to shoot down because it maneuvers at hypersonic speeds right before it hits. The drills specifically practice the most critical step of all, the loading procedure. That means taking the nuclear warheads from their secret storage bunkers and actually mating them with the missiles. The second weapon they put on display was the Kinzhal, which means dagger. This is an air-launched hypersonic missile, fired from a high-altitude MiG jet. The speed, the range, it's just devastating. So by drilling with both the ground-launched Iskander and the air-launched Kinzhal, the Kremlin was sending a crystal-clear message. Every single corner of Europe is within our reach. Now, if you look at this from Moscow's point of view, these drills weren't some random act of aggression. They saw it as a reaction. See, in the weeks leading up to May 21st, several Western leaders made statements that the Kremlin viewed as a massive, dangerous escalation of the conflict. It really started with the French president, Emmanuel Macron. He basically shattered a long-standing NATO taboo. He suggested that, hey, maybe sending Western ground troops into Ukraine should be on the table. For over 2 years, the unwritten rule was simple: avoid any direct conflict between NATO soldiers and Russian soldiers at all costs. Macron was now publicly questioning that very rule. And then, as if that wasn't enough, UK Foreign Secretary David Cameron just poured gasoline on the fire. During a trip to Kyiv, he essentially gave Ukraine the green light to use British long-range missiles to strike targets deep inside Russia itself. Now, for Putin's government, this was it. This was the ultimate red line being crossed. It felt like a shift from simply helping Ukraine defend itself to actively taking part in attacks on Russia proper. The Kremlin's reaction was, well, swift and furious. Putin's spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, called the remarks unprecedented and dangerous. So the nuclear drills that followed, they were the direct response, a loud, very visible, sobering signal that was designed to make Western leaders stop and think, really think, about what they were saying. Okay, let's talk geography. Because where you practice for nuclear war matters almost as much as how you do it. And the location of these drills was picked very, very carefully for maximum psychological effect. Yeah, these exercises weren't happening out in some remote part of Siberia. No, they took place right in the southern military district. This is the absolute nerve center for Russia's entire war in Ukraine, headquartered in Rostov-on-Don. So holding nuclear drills here was basically a dress rehearsal for using these weapons in the actual theater of war, either on or very near the front lines. And the escalation didn't even stop there. First, you had Russia practicing by itself in the southern military district. But then, they announced that Belarusian forces would join in for the second stage. Now, remember, Russia has already put tactical nukes on Belarusian soil. So this move effectively stretched Putin's nuclear umbrella right over Belarus, sending a clear message to NATO that any attack on its ally could be met with a nuclear response. So, with Russia putting its nuclear pieces on the board so openly, how did the West respond to this game of nuclear chess? Well, the reaction was a really carefully managed mix of public outrage and strategic calm. But believe me, behind the scenes, a very high-stakes psychological game was playing out. Publicly, you had the Pentagon calling it irresponsible rhetoric. NATO officials came out and said they saw no actual change in Russia's nuclear posture, which is code for the warheads haven't moved in a way that signals an immediate launch. But military analysts were quick to point out that, hey, while the footage was definitely staged for the cameras, the procedures they were practicing, the logistics of moving and loading these incredibly dangerous weapons were very, very real. And this brings us to a really fascinating and frankly scary Russian military doctrine called reflexive control. See, the goal isn't always to use a nuclear weapon. The goal is to use the threat of one to control what your enemy does. By constantly reminding the West of this nuclear risk, Russia hopes to make leaders pause, to hesitate, to self-censor, and to maybe scale back the kind of support they give to Ukraine. It's a strategy of trying to win by making your opponent too scared to make their next move. So after all that, what's the ultimate takeaway from this whole chilling episode? Look, these drills weren't just some passing headline. They really represent a fundamental shift in the whole landscape of global security. We have entered a new, and I think we have to admit, far more dangerous era. For Russia, you could argue the drills worked. They absolutely forced the word nuclear back into every single security briefing in Washington, London, and Brussels. It was a powerful reminder that, hey, while our conventional army might have struggled, our nuclear arsenal is top tier, second to none. And for the West, it was a brutal wake-up call, a reminder that the nuclear taboo, that fragile peace that's held since 1945, is being tested like never before. Here's the crucial point, the thing we all need to understand now. We have to look at these military exercises in a whole new light. They're not just for practice anymore. They're not just for show. They've become a primary way that nuclear-armed powers communicate with each other. It's a dialogue, but it's a dialogue conducted with missile systems and warhead loading procedures. And that is a profoundly dangerous way to talk. And that brings us to the final, unsettling question that's just hanging over all of this. Is this all just political theater, a really sophisticated form of saber rattling, meant to intimidate the West? Or have these events pushed the world dangerously closer to a nuclear threshold than any of us really care to admit? What do you think? Is this a bluff, or is the danger real? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments. And if you want to stay ahead of these critical global stories, make sure you subscribe for more explainers just like this one. Thanks for watching.